So I have here where I'm just making a very simple sales report. You can see I have my assumptions right here. I have my 2012 sales, and what I'm going to say is that I expect each year my sales to increase by 15%. So the formula would be equals my previous year's sales times 1 plus the rate that I expect my sales to increase by, and I can refer to that cell. Okay. Now the reason why it's 1 plus, this is, by the way, this should not be dollars, that should be percentage. So you can see 0.15 is equal to 15%. And our result is 115,000. So what we did there is I said, again, I'm going to enter it, equals previous year sales, that's 2012 sales, times 1 plus our sales increase assumption for each year, which is 15%. So that's previous year sales, 100,000 times 1 plus 0.15. And 1 plus 0.15 equals 1.15. If we were to only do it times 0.15, it would only give us 15,000. So our sales are going to be the total amount of our previous year sales plus 15%. Another way I could enter this is equals 100,000, because that's what it's going to be, plus previous year sales times our percentage of increase, and we would get the same result. I'll just go ahead and I'll stick with that instead of the 1 plus, so that way we don't have anything hard coded in. And now I can drag this formula over, and our sale. I'm making a mistake on purpose, but that's to get getting to something. Okay, so now when I drag that formula over in cell D, I dragged a formula from cell C5 over to cell D5 using autofill. It entered the same formula, but it's referring to cells one cell over. Since we dragged it one cell over, it's referring to cells one cell over. So just as where I initially entered my formula here, it's referring to cell B5 times, or B5 plus cell B5 times cell B6. Over here, it's going to do cell C5 plus cell C5 times cell C6. It's doing 1 over. Now you can see there was no increase, and the reason why is because there's no content in cell C6, our percentage increase. If I drag this over, it'll change because it's referring to that cell. Okay, but instead of us having to drag this all the way over and having our sales increase, instead of doing that, let's go ahead and get rid of this and just keep. So you can see that could have worked, but a better way to do it is to hit equals sales times 1 plus our sales increase, close our parentheses. Now, cell B6, select cell B6 and hit F4 on your keyboard. And there, you can see it inserted a dollar symbol before the column letter and a dollar symbol before the row number. And now, we will drag this formula over, and you can see that we get increases. So what that did was it locked in our formula, our initial formula, we said equals B5 times 1 plus the content there, and then we entered in the dollar symbol by hitting F4, or you can enter it manually. Now what we do is when we drag this formula over, it's going to drag cell B5, into whenever we drag our formula into cell D5, it's going to refer to cell B5 is going to turn into cell C5, but because we lock this cell reference in, because we hit the dollar symbols, it's locking this cell reference in. So no matter where we drag this part of the equation will always be cell B6. However, in these cells, it won't be. And there I'm referring. You gotta hit enter. However, in all these other cells, it changes. And I'll show formula. Click on the formula tab, show formula, and you can see each formula. It just goes from B5 to C5 to D5 to E5, but because we put those dollar symbols in, it always refers to the previous cell times cell B6. C referring to D5, the previous cell times 1 plus locked in B6. So now you kind of understand these cell reference a little bit better. Or I hope you do. Play with it. Okay, now I'm going to get into functions. Functions do all the calculations for us, so we really don't even need to enter operators, unless we choose to combine operators with functions, which I do all the time. Okay, so I'm going to go over a few functions. Basically, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can manually enter in a function. Like I said, you always have to enter equals, and then there's going to be a prefix, which Excel has set to describe what function is performing. So the first one I do is a sum function for addition, and all you do is hit equals SUM, and then you open your parentheses, and then you need to enter in your arguments, and you'll close your parentheses. Now, the sum function requires arguments. What I mean by argument is it requires you to say that number 1 plus and another number to find the sum. It requires you to give it numbers that it needs to find the sum of, and those numbers are the arguments. So you can see no arguments, and there we have a problem. Okay, so I understand that. So let me enter in my arguments. Each argument needs to be separated by a comma. So there, I'm finding there's my 3 arguments. I'm going to find the sum of cell C2, cell D2, and cell E2, and there's my sum, my result. Now I can also, since those are all next to each other, I could just select the entire range, and Excel will know that I want to find the sum of that range of cells, and it works. But you can't use a range of cells for all arguments. And basically what I'm getting at is all of these arguments, for the most part, require different types of functions, different types of arguments. Now I'm going to show you how to enter functions. There's different ways that you can enter and insert functions into a cell. You can use the insert function dialog box. So I'm going to introduce that to you now. You can insert function by clicking on the Formulas tab, which I already have open, and you can click the Insert Function dialog box. Now here, you can browse functions, or you can search for functions by typing a description. So I want to add numbers together, so I'm going to type in a description of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the sum function. I'm typing in add numbers together. And then I'm going to click go. And now a list of recommended functions will appear, and that looks like we found it in the top of the list, the sum function. So I click OK, and the sum function is already being inserted into that cell, but now it wants to know my arguments. I can move this box around, and I can select my arguments. If I want to refer to cells, I can do it like I did before, number 1, and then I can enter my second argument. This is just like I'm selecting it, separating them by commas. Argument number 2, and you can see after I've selected my second argument that the boxes keep appearing. And argument number 3, and no more arguments. And there it finds my sum. Alright, so the different functions require different arguments. The sum function has an indefinite amount of arguments.